hiring is stressful and resource and time intensive enough, if they're bringing me on board, I want to be frictionless and provide them a smooth process as much as possible. Hello, and welcome back to another video. My name is Preston. I'm a professional recruiter running my own agency for almost a decade. Been doing this a long time. If you're new here, welcome. If you're looking for a new job or you need help hiring, looking for that next rock star, feel free to reach out to me. But in this video, we're going to actually talk about 5 tips to be a better recruiter from my experience. Before we get started, please consider supporting a fellow recruiter. Give us a like, subscribe, click that bell. Would really mean a lot. Let's get into it. First things first, if you're new, a couple things about me. I started my career in about 2014, 2015, joined a US nationwide staffing firm here in the US. They had about 300 recruiters at the time. I joined, started from the bottom, worked really hard, and was able to become one of the top producers in just a little over a year. I was able to do $500,000 on my own desk, was able to reach that $100,000 in billable commissions in 1 month on my desk, no client handouts, no other employees helping me. I then left that, went to an early stage startup, ran out of money, came back on the job market. I'm like, you know what? I had such a good experience. I want to bet against myself and start my own solo recruiting career. And that's what I did. I was able to make $500,000 again on my own desk the first year. No VAs, no employees, all on my own desk, all with cold calling and cold emailing. And since then, grateful to say, did over 7 figures worth of placements. Now, before we continue, quick disclaimer, just want to make sure that everything I'm sharing with you right now is based on my own experience. If you agree, disagree, that's totally cool. My only hope is that it helps you, gives you value so that you can level up, can help with your business, help with your practice, and maybe one day we can all work together. That'd be really cool. Tip number 1, ask for interview process information. This is really important when you're talking to candidates for the first time, qualifying and screening them, really asking them all the important juicy questions to gather as much information and data about that person as possible. If you don't do this, there are a couple things that can happen. Number 1, you'll never know if you need to accelerate a candidate's interview process. So let's say that you found a rock star candidate and they actually have a final round happening the next day. You forget to ask, you have no idea that's happening. And then once you go back to your team saying, I found the rockstar candidate, a couple days go by and they're like, you know what? We want to talk to this candidate. You go back to the candidate, like, you know what? I just got an offer. I accepted it. You would have been able to prevent and mitigate that situation from happening from asking from the get-go what their process is. Are they in process with any other companies? How early are they? How late stage are they? Are they expecting any offers? What kind of companies are these? These are all really important questions that you need to ask so that you can best navigate how to move forward. If you did this effectively the first time, then you can relay back to your hiring manager saying, hey, we found a rock star candidate. We need to accelerate the process, condense it as much as possible to remain competitive. Number 2, by asking this information, you can also ping clients for incoming competitive offers that they need to be aware about, similar to what I was talking about. But if you talk to a candidate, like, you know what, we are expecting another offer, or maybe an offer is inbound, you can then let your clients know that the client that your candidate's interviewing is saying, hey, we need to accelerate, we need to be competitive, and if you're okay doing that, and we want to fast track them to an offer, this is potentially the range that they're going to be getting from the other competitors, so that if your clients do come out with an offer, it's competitive to the other offers, so it's not lowballing completely out of the question, so that you can really then focus on having a really effective negotiation phase. It's going to be very complicated, possible bidding war with other offers, but at least your client now has a seat at the table being competitive than not knowing any of this and then being outbid and outmoved by a competitor that's moving faster. The third thing is that you won't be able to find out how your candidate feels about your positions versus others. When I talk to candidates and when I collect all this information, I also want to ask them, hey, like, I know you're also in process with our clients. How do you feel just in terms of overall excitement and ranking with the other companies that you're referring to? This can kind of give you a really high level snapshot, pulse check on what the candidate's feeling in terms of their gut, right? A lot of times you really want them to say, I love your client, rank them top 3 or even better, top 1 out of all the other companies, love the team, love the salary, love the culture. What you don't want to hear so much, but it's still very important, is that, like, you know what, I'm also interviewing 2 or 3 others. These are a lot more exciting because they're higher salary, better scope, better title. You can use all of this to then go back to your client saying, hey, our candidate really likes you. They're also in process with X, Y, and Z. They could be expecting a greater title, scope, and salary. Is there something that we can modify with the current scope of this position, the salary and title to remain competitive? So that if the candidate continues to move forward process with your client and candidate, instead of, you know, the other companies possibly being here, your clients being down here, now it's more of an equal playing field, giving you a better shot to get your candidate across the finish line with your client and hoping that they accept that deal. Number 2, something simple, but you want to try to use multiple screens. So for myself, I've worked off of my Apple laptop my whole career, and probably for the first maybe 6 months of my first year, I realized, oh my goodness, like, it'd be really helpful to have another screen. So again, I'm not saying that you can't be a successful recruiter with one screen. I'm saying a second screen or multiple can be very helpful. Why? As a recruiter, a recruiting professional, you'll be juggling so many things at the same time. Candidates that are in process, feedback calls, negotiations, candidate calls, emails, reference checks, your database is open, your Slack is open, how your sourcing is open, text messages. To be able to consolidate all of that across multiple screens and really organize it can really help you in terms of just working efficiently, just being more productive. If everything is on one screen, you just have to constantly open everything up, or you have to just toggle between tabs. That's totally cool if you have a workflow that works best for you. But I feel like if you can have multiple screens and see a lot of the big stuff open at the same time, neatly organized, then it's less friction in your mind mentally. You're able to go back and forth between different tasks and priorities. Just overall, it should be conducive to just a better optimal work performance. Some people hate working with multiple screens. I have now come to be a huge believer of it. I have my laptop screen right here and another desktop monitor right here. I don't need 3, I don't need 4 screens to overdo it. I just need to have certain windows open so that I don't have to keep track of anything. I don't have to keep track in my mind. Do I need to open something, close something? I can just look to my left, look to my right. I see all the important things in the data in front of me at my own fingertips. Again, it's all about organization, all about efficiency, but it really helps. There are a lot of affordable desktops and screen sizes out there. That's not going to break your bank. The next one is you want to do periodic check-in calls. I think a lot of recruiters, it's very easy to find candidates and then get into the habit of just sending it to the clients or hiring managers, and that's it. They're hands off. They just hope, they pray, kind of like a lottery mindset. You can still do deals like that, no problem. But I think that you're leaving so much control, so much opportunities to have impact for you to increase that probability of that placement happening, for you to be able to truly be an advocate for your candidate, and to be able to maximize the chance of the candidates making it to the offer final stages, to then talk about finer details of the offer. A check-in call plays a lot of different roles, but for me, it's all about being able to check in periodically with your candidate as he or she goes through the process, so that you can start to develop a relationship with them. You can start being a trusted ear, a trusted, unbiased third party with them, and it'd be an amazing opportunity for you to also collect information and data from them, so that if there are anything that stands out, you can address it right on the spot. Let's go a little bit deeper. So interviewing and applying for new jobs, if you've ever done that, can be extremely overwhelming, stressful, and just scary. You'll feel like you're the only person in the world doing it, and sometimes the closest people in your life, your significant other, partner, friends, are just not going to be able to relate or understand. By regularly checking in, right? Us recruiters, especially in the staffing world, I see ourselves as like a 5-star white glove concierge that connects people who are hiring to people who are looking for jobs. By regularly checking in and being professional and empathetic and being able to be unbiased and objective as much as possible, we become, number one, first and foremost, kind of like a trusted resource, a comfortable friend for the candidate. We also are able to address any concerns or obstacles that may come up. What usually is the case in the beginning might not usually be the case in the end. What do I mean by that? When you talk to a candidate in the first round, they might have different levels of, or different numbers of concerns, questions, or areas that they're kind of focused on. As they continue to progress throughout the interview stage, that changes. They're going to be focusing more on something completely different, or focusing more on the offer, or focus more on competitive offer, or maybe more of like the culture or team member element as they talk to more and more people. You would just have no idea if that's happening if you don't do occasional check-ins with them throughout the process. What your candidate says, what he or she thinks, what he or she believes in the beginning of the process, that doesn't remain static throughout the entire process. It's dynamic, it changes and evolves as new experiences, new data, new conversations happen. Throughout the interview process, if the candidate's like, wow, I'm concerned about X, Y, and Z, I have questions, then you're able to relay that to the team, get answers immediately and address it so that the candidate can feel good, remain a positive headspace going into the final rounds, and then ultimately focus on the bigger aspects of the job, the exciting things, why you think it's a good fit, than worrying about all these millions of little red flags and concerns that might just take up all of their brain capacity. You're also able to have a lot more opportunities to sell and pitch candidates of your job. It's another great way for you to not only sync with the candidates, but also to get them energized, refocused about the job at hand. It's a way for them not only to learn more about the company by interviewing, but also, by you being able to listen to them, understanding exactly what they need. You know what they're looking for. You know exactly how perfect this job is in terms of aligning with all the hopes and expectations that the candidate wants. It's another great chance for you to remind the candidates, to be able to refocus them on the bigger issues at hand, because it's very easy to be carried away by smaller details when you're interviewing, and focus really on why did you start interviewing in the first place, what made the candidate initially excited about your job in the first place, and then just to have that constant reminder will allow that information to stay within the candidate's mind so that they can continuously think about it as they go throughout the process. Lastly, you're able to get new updates or changing details about your candidates. We touched upon this before, but if a candidate starts a process with another company, they're expecting an offer from another company, they're now entering a final round with another company, by you checking with them regularly, you're now able to get this information and be able to modify the process with your client accordingly, whether it's condensing, accelerating, you have to increase the salary, you have to modify offer terms, all the information, all of the decision making that's going to happen in the future is only possible if you collect that information now based on the regular check-in calls with the candidates. Tip number 4 is like you really want to also just be flexible in this business, right? What do I mean by that? So especially right now, it's a very tough market. You want to maybe consider lowering your fee, your flat fee or percentage with clients to begin with. I do this all the time. I totally understand that if I do this, most likely they're working with, a couple other staffing agencies at the same time. You may disagree with me, but for me, that's okay because I know the speed and value that we bring to a client. We're able to kind of join a client working with a lot of other agencies and end up being the only partner or two that they really like. I'm open to competition. I know that's the lay of the land and it comes with the territory of this business. And I'm okay being selective, picking up roles, knowing that they're going to hire a lot more in the future so I can get my foot in the door and do some good work. You may not agree with me, like Preston, like you should just always stick with 18, 20, 25, 30%. That's totally cool. I don't do this all the time. It really depends on what are the positions I'll be working on, how many positions I'll be hiring for in the future, and how healthy and great of a relationship that I can see me having with this particular client. Also, you can let candidates negotiate on their own. I get it. There's two major school of thoughts about this in staffing and recruiting. On one hand, you have staffing firms, and I was taught like this, where the staffing, the boutique agency has to control everything, including negotiations. That's great. But what I also learned throughout the years is I became a little bit more flexible on this myself. I started my business like this, but I also realized like, hey, like I'm not in the business of trying to make things more difficult or to give clients a tough time. Like hiring is stressful and resource and time intensive enough. If they're bringing me on board, I want to be frictionless and provide them a smooth process as much as possible. So if I'm working with a client and they prefer to negotiate directly with the candidate, that's totally cool with me. I'm more than happy to play a secondary role. If the candidate's like, hey, I'm more than comfortable negotiating on my own, I'm like, that's totally cool. Just continue to CC and keep me abreast. Other times it's case by case basis, right? I would lead the negotiations myself and control that whole process. Whatever the process is for the client, I try to adapt to it. If it's a process where I think that it could be tweaked or optimized, then I would basically communicate that effectively, and maybe I would be more hands-on in that process. So again, this is something that like I've learned over the years, like it's more of a personal preference thing. And yeah, that's just how I think about that. You can also let clients take ownership of the interview process coordination. Same thing about what I just talked about, but relating to coordinating. Whether you help coordinating, you send out the invites, or the client does that. Typically, from my experience, if you engage with the company, most of the time they would have some sort of like system, standard operating procedure that works best for them and their interviews. Cool, that's totally cool. Tell me what that is and I'll adapt to it like a Lego piece, right? Or if they don't have any process or any systems, I would encourage them to follow a system that I would recommend that I know works well, that's optimal, and maybe it's one that I'll be more hands-on in. Again, it depends on your business, depends on your industry, depends on the roles that you do. No need to be stubborn or to give a tough time, right? Also, one more thing that I forgot to mention is that a lot of times you think that you might find the perfect candidate, right? And then the client does not think that the candidate's perfect. And so what happens is you think they're perfect, the client doesn't think they're perfect, and you get into this cycle of just never-ending argument. To me, like I think arguing and fighting for a candidate, there is a time and place for that, but also I'd rather, keep searching to have a good plan B, plan C, plan D, than keep fighting for a plan A for it to not to work, or you keep pushing, comes off super aggressive to the client to the point where they don't want to work with you anymore. That to me is a lot more harmful and a lot more of a net negative result than doing the extra work and finding additional contingency plans or a backup plan for the client. And in that way, you'll keep the pipeline going. It's still healthy. You're not going to be really focused on just like, please, please, please talk to my candidate, even though you've gotten 5 no's already. It's just a better use of everyone's time to just let the candidate go, pitch them another job, use them to develop new relationships with clients, and focus on other candidates that can obviously align more with what the client's looking for. Our purpose as a staffing partner isn't to make people and teams' lives more difficult, but to make them easier. And that's really what I believe fundamentally. When you're talking to candidates, in my opinion, it's really important to try to also get a salary minimum and an ideal or a target, aka the range. But If you're working here in the US, please keep in mind there are a handful of states where you can't ask directly what the candidates are making. Again, if compensation comes up, there are different ways that you can collect this, or most of the time candidates are happy to even share this with you because they know that you were coming from a good place and we just want to help them. But for me, if possible, try to get a range of like what is a floor, that a number they don't want to go below, and then what is their ideal. By understanding this, it'll give you actually a lot of leverage to be able to utilize in terms of like future decision making and how it can impact your just management of the candidate through an interview process. So number one, you'll know when an offer is a complete lowball or totally unreasonable or disrespectful. So if you talk to a candidate like, I don't ever want to go below 100, but they're looking for 120, and then you know that the whole interview process goes through, the offer comes out somehow at like 90, you know from your conversations with the candidate that is a complete deal breaker. Candidate's not going to take it at all. If you've never collected this info, you could be, you know what, there's still a chance. I'll maybe focus on the equity, get a sign-on bonus, and then try to push that aggressively on the candidate. That could leave a bad taste in the candidate's mouth, ultimately possibly hurting your relationship with them. You do not want to do that. You'll also be able to understand what degree the candidates are flexible on the offer, assuming that they get other things that are important to them. So if the candidate's like, you know what, I really don't want to go below 100, I'm looking for like 120, but an offer comes out at maybe like 105, you now know that it's still within the range, that's not going to completely piss off the candidate. They will still strongly consider the offer. But if you know for your client they're completely capped out on the salary, but they might have some wiggle room on sign-on bonus or equity, you might be able to get that all in a little bit higher to the middle or to the top range, closer to the ideal sweet spot that you know what the candidate's looking for. So now understanding where the range is would really help in this scenario. It'll also be able to help you pitch candidates new roles in the future by understanding their range. So a lot of times you talk to a candidate and they're like, you know what, I don't want to go below 100, I'm looking for 120. If you just put them in your database or whatever tool that you use for 120, but you've come by like another awesome opportunity that's like 110 or 100, but with tons of performance bonus or equity in the back end, that candidate profile is not going to filter up or it's not going to come present if you've never put in also the bottom range of that as well. So at a certain point, every candidate is flexible to a certain degree. If you just completely go off their ideal or target, you might just miss a lot of opportunities that still might be a great fit for the candidate. You just have to, make sure all the other variables like a bonus and equity on the back end, benefits, all that good stuff also makes sense, remote included. So I hope that this helps. If you're looking for salary information with the candidates, try to do your best to get the ideal, provided you're not going to get this from every candidate, but do your best. Well, I hope that these 5 tips help. It's definitely ones that I use every single day still as a recruiting professional. If there are other tips that you like that I haven't listed below, please let me know. But either way, appreciate your time, doing my best to make these videos for you, and I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you on the next one.